Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Warhammer Total War Online commentary. In this particular ladder battle, I will be playing the Vampire Counts with the Grim and the Grave DLC, so really excited for this. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I was able to finally bring the Strigoi Ghoul King on his flying Terrorgeist here, so look, just take a moment to look how freaking cool that guy looks. Riding a Terrorgeist doesn't get much more intense than that. So I'm playing against an Empire opponent who also brought some of the new DLC units. It looks like he has Sterling's Revenge over here, the Free Company Militia, who he Vanguard deployed on the top of the hill, so he's going to get that immediate line of sight, but I think it's a little bit of a risky gambit considering all these flying units and mobile units the Vampire Counts have. So this battle gets into action really quick, so I'm actually going to pause it real quick while I go over the army comp. So front line of Skeleton Warriors, great shielded against Empire, great fodder unit, just big fan of those guys. And behind them, I have standard Graveguard, armored, shielded, anti-infantry. Again, most Empire infantry isn't heavily armored. You can see 30 armor on these halberdiers, and and he did bring flagellants who have 0 armor. So regardless, you don't need a lot of armor piercing against Empire infantry usually. So in the back, just in case he had some great swords or something like that, I brought some Crypt Horrors. And another great thing is the Strigoi King. He can summon Crypt Horrors if you overcast it. One of you guys actually told me that in the comments, and I didn't know that. So thank you so much for mentioning that. Really appreciate it. I've been doing it every game now, so appreciate you guys. Got the White King back here. He has a single potion. So remember, guys, for those of you who are just joining, take a look at this little health orb here. You can see each character now can only be healed for a certain amount per game. So bringing 2 potions isn't necessarily worth it anymore. You'll just want to bring 1. And also with Invocation of Nehek or the periodic healing from the Claw of Nagash, the Mortis engine, remember a certain group of units can only be healed for so much. So for example, if you take a look at the Strigoi Ghoul King, he can only be healed for 2,658 hit points over the course of a game. So just something to consider. In the back here, this is my new favorite cavalry, anti-cavalry composition. It's the Blood Knights mixed with the DIREPACK. These are the renowned Direwolf regiment. They're just so awesome. They have anti-large. So they're going to actually do, even though their weapon strength is only 22, against large units, they're going to do some decent damage. So I think these two in tandem with one another are just an absolutely devastating anti-cavalry unit. Then I also brought the Claw of Nagash, the Mortis engine. I had like 200 extra resources. Personally, I don't know if the chilling aura that it has is worth it. But again, it looks so cool. I had 200 extra. Why not? So this has great combat stats, 120 strength. It will drain life from all nearby opponents, and then it'll also heal your troops. So it kind of fills that same role as the Necromancer, and it also has that draining effect, which is quite powerful over a really long, atrocious battle. So I'm excited to experiment with it a little bit and see how it plays out. But it's a great unit to have in the middle of your front and center battle line. So I got Vargeist. Again, they're great against diving Empire missile infantry. I have the Strigoi Ghoul King with the Lore of Death. He has the Spirit Leech, and then he also has Invocation of Nehek. He can summon his Crypt Ghouls or his Crypt Horrors, and then he also has Gaze of Nagash. So really like the Strigoi Ghoul King. He's poisoned. He has armor piercing. He is great at just battling enemy lords. Just very strong and very cool thematically too. Just look at that guy. Anyways, so my opponent, he has the Sterling's Revenge, the Free Company here. He also has some Knights of the Blazing Sun who are very good. They're great against Vampire Counts. They do the flame damage, and if you guys notice, if you take a look at the Strigoi Ghoul King, for example, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he does have a weakness to fire. I know that some of those units do. I'm trying to find it right now. Yes. So 20% weakness to fire damage, and a lot of the Vampire Count units that have regeneration do have that same weakness. So they're a great choice if you can get them onto the right targets. And his infantry line is Halberdiers, pretty good. Armor piercing, they can deal with Graveguard okay. The charge defense against large foes. He has Crossbowmen, another great choice. You don't really need handgunners. You don't need a lot of armor piercing against the Counts. And then he has a General of the Empire with 2 potions. So maybe he didn't get the memo, or he just wants the armor buff. And then he also has a Bright Wizard, who I firmly believe that the Lore of Fire is one of the best choices against Vampire Counts. Simply, that buff is so powerful at dealing with ethereal units. And again, you saw a lot of the units have weakness to fire. So, and then these guys, look how freaking cool they are, the Flagellants. So pretty decent combat stats across the board. And against Vampire Counts, you don't need armor piercing, but that raw, the frenzy, the fact that they're unbreakable, just awesome unit. They have pretty good melee attack, good weapon strength, and they are cheap too. They're not an expensive unit to get. And one thing they are weak against is missile fire, but against Vampire Counts, I'm telling you, if you imbue these guys with the Flaming Sword of Ruin, they'll put a beating on some guys. So definitely a fan of those. So without further ado, let's get started. One of the issues my opponent's going to have right away is he did do that Vanguard deployment not knowing what my composition would look like, but these guys are severely out of position now, and he does have the Knights of the Blazing Sun coming up the hill, But with the DIREPACK, as well as these Blood Knights, and also the Bats, these guys are just going to get tied down and destroyed. But they do have pretty good, pretty decent melee combat stats. But with 38 melee attack, but regardless, the DIREPACKs are now on them. The Vargeists are here, and the Vargeists are going to land and tie up these guys, so they're not going to get their charge bonus. And then, of course, the Blood Knights are going to come in and just wreak havoc. So definitely a really rough start for my opponent's free militia, and the Blood Knights just segue right into this matchup. And this is a horrible matchup for the Knights of the Blazing Sun. They have Vargeist on them. They have the DIREPACK, all that stuff. So across the main hill, we're engaging. Things are going pretty well. You can see the Mortis engine is starting to drain the opponent's units. It's a slow drain, but again, at the end of the day, it adds up and does a pretty good job. So I was able to just absolutely crush his Knights here, as well as the free militia. And unfortunately for him, that was kind of what he was using to protect this eastern flank over here. So it's definitely tough, and now these units are just going to kind of run amok here and get into my opponent's battle line, and they're led by the Strigoi Ghoul King, who is definitely a force to be reckoned with. And he did summon some Crypt Horrors, which are now just going to get, even further into the opponent's line, and I am using those Philbats to tie up his missile infantry. On the high ground, the battle's kind of engaged. His Halberdiers have gotten in against these Crypt Horrors, and, it's a decent matchup for them, but to be honest, a lot of his power was invested in those Knights of the Blazing Sun over there, and those free militia, and now, he has his Demogryph Knights with Halberds tied up with Grave Guard, so it's definitely not an optimal situation, especially when this Claw of Nagash is just sitting here draining everything. This is exactly what you want. You want the Claw to just be like in the epicenter of your melee battle, just draining everything. So regardless, my opponent wisely pulls his Demogryph Knights out. He's probably going to try and reform some ranks here. And a very pitched battle is began to happen down here. But Flagellants, they're not going to be great against Blood Knights. Blood Knights are very heavily armored, and I do get a nice Invocation from the Heck, which heals up all of these units back here. But, on the positive note for my opponent, the Flagellants won't rout. Hopefully they can tie up all these guys and, deal with the Strigoi King. But yeah, look how scary he is on that freaking thing, just cutting through those guys. So I really like him as a leader. It kind of brings a new play style, and there my opponent brings his other group of Flagellants. So he's definitely looking to just tie these guys up, I think. And I believe he does use some sort of a buff here with his Bright Wizard. Looks like he's casting something. Let's see what it is. It's probably up on the high ground. He's using like Flaming Sword of Ruin or something. So, but yeah, the Strigoi King is great for hunting enemy leadership, because if he's able to get his paws, and look at that, he can also cast Gaze of Nagash. It's just so powerful. So he can not only slow you, poison you, have high armor piercing damage, he can also cast Gaze of Nagash when he's able to isolate a target. So that's just so powerful, and I really look forward to experimenting with him in competitive play. And also, you guys, what's been your experience with Vlad von Karstein and the other new Vampire Lords? I haven't really tried them yet, and I'm looking forward to it. So we'll go ahead and see how that goes. So he does have his Demogryph Knights here, and I don't know if it was the Renowned unit. It looks like he has the Zintler's Reichsguard, which are pretty cool. I believe they do... What are their buffs here? I'm having trouble catching them in the heat of combat, but we'll go ahead and take a look at that after the game. But yeah, he is able to get some cavalry out, but at this point, it's looking pretty rough. His Flagellants are starting to get, worn down here, especially with the Strigoi Ghoul King, but at the very least, they're not going to rout off, So that could be much worse. And several of his units are starting to, run away at this point, and, you guys saw the Strigoi King was able to make short work of that Bright Wizard, and the Vargeist will make sure he doesn't come back. So at that point, it's pretty much game over. A lot of it, came down to the fact that he got caught out on that hill right there. And that's something you guys always got to consider. Vampire accounts can close the distance really fast, and especially on this particular map. I mean, you definitely need to cater your army to it. That's why I invested in the Vargeist and the Bats, because on this map, it's really important to get that hill advantage. And, he thought the same thing, but he didn't have the troops to cover that, which was definitely a little tricky, but was definitely still, he put up a great fight considering how much he lost in that initial shock. So definitely a good player there. Anyways, breakdown of the army. You guys can see the Blood Knights and the DIREPACK. I mean, they're just so good together. I really like this new synergy between these two units. It's just absolutely amazing. And the Strigoi King being able to summon Crypt Horrors is really good. I mean, because when you have him on the Terrorgeist and he can fly to like an optimal position, summon some Crypt Horrors, and they can just tear into ranged units, whatever you want them to take down. So definitely not a bad choice. My opponent's army, the Flagellants did okay. They were definitely not in a good matchup. He probably should have had him up like fighting the skeletons and then kept some of his Halberdiers back. And, that probably would have been a little better. But at the end of the day, the Knights of the Blazing Sun going down and not getting much value was the reason he lost. The Zintler's Reichsguards actually did really good. I didn't get much eyes on them in the battle, but that's a lot of kills. Even if most of them are skeletons, that's still a lot. Nothing to sneeze at. So, again, it just came down to him losing these two units almost immediately. because then you're down like 1,000 plus resources, and it's just a rough battle. So, but he definitely put up a good fight and a good game to MJ Blair. I look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and just want to thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed seeing the Strigoi Gold King in action, and more content with him coming your way. Thanks again, guys, and have an excellent day.